For 10 years, architects devoted themselves to a single shape, the circle. What begins as a simple line becomes ritual, meditation, and discovery. Across history, circles have shaped how we build and think, from ancient stone rings to the Pantheon's oculus, from Boullée's visionary spheres to Escher's infinite patterns, from Tadao Ando's serene pavilions to Pezo von Ellrichshausen's decade of circular experiments. These architects and artists show how repetition transforms both space and self. The circle is more than geometry. It's unity, return, and endless possibility. A journey that begins and ends at the same point, a shape without end. A hand moves across a page, slow and steady, tracing the same path it has traced 1,000 times before. The line meets its starting point, closes in on itself, and becomes a circle. The next day, the same motion repeats, day after day, year after year, until 10 years have passed and the page is filled with endless loops. At first, the act seems simple, almost too simple, but over time, it begins to change both the hand that draws and the mind that guides it. Repetition becomes its own teacher. Drawing a circle every day for a decade is more than practice. It is a commitment to one shape, one motion, one idea. The line must be smooth, unbroken, without hesitation. At first, it wobbles. The hand trembles. The circle is imperfect. Frustration rises, then falls away as the act becomes routine. Precision grows through patience. What begins as an exercise in control turns into a form of meditation. The circle demands focus, but gives clarity in return. The drawer enters a state where the world narrows to a single point: pencil, paper, motion. In that space, the mind rests even as the hand works. The circle has no beginning and no end. Its path always returns to itself. Drawing it again and again becomes a way of exploring that idea. Each time the pencil travels around the curve, it follows a journey that ends where it started. The drawer changes, even if the shape does not. Over time, subtle differences appear: pressure, speed, thickness of the line. What seems like repetition is really transformation. In this way, the circle mirrors life itself, a continuous loop of return and renewal. Across cultures, the circle holds deep meaning. In many traditions, it represents unity and wholeness. The sun and moon are circles, symbols of cycles and balance. Ancient peoples saw the horizon as a ring encircling their world. In sacred art, the circle often marks the space where the human meets the divine. Buddhist mandalas, made of colored sand, form intricate circular designs meant to guide meditation. In medieval cathedrals, rose windows spread light through stained glass petals arranged in perfect rings. In Islamic art, complex geometric patterns radiate outward in circular symmetry, expressing the infinite nature of creation. Even in modern times, a simple wedding ring carries the idea of eternity, a promise with no end. The circle also appears in places built to connect the earthly with the cosmic. Cities have been planned around circular forms to symbolize harmony and order. In spiritual spaces, circular layouts draw people inward toward a center. The Roman Pantheon offers a striking example. Its vast dome rises above a perfect circle of walls, and at its peak, a round opening called the oculus lets sunlight pour in. As the day passes, the light moves across the interior like a silent clock. Standing beneath it, one feels both small and connected to something vast. The circle here is not just a shape, but a bridge between heaven and earth. Committing to draw circles for 10 years is like building a structure within oneself. A decade is long enough to test devotion and witness change. In creative work, 10 years marks a deep investment. It is more than a project. It becomes a way of life. The drawer may begin with a clear goal, but find that the practice itself reshapes the goal over time. Early years are spent learning technique, middle years refining skill, and later years questioning what has been built. This slow unfolding mirrors the rhythm of the circle itself. Imagine someone who begins at age 20. At first, they draw with youthful energy, eager for mastery. By 30, they have drawn tens of thousands of circles. Their hand now moves with quiet certainty, no longer straining for perfection. The act has changed them. They have lived through seasons of doubt and discovery, Yet every day they return to the page. 10 years of circles create a visible record of an invisible journey. Each loop holds a moment, a day, a memory. Looking back, the drawer sees not only the history of the circles, but the history of themselves. This practice shows how repetition can hold meaning beyond the surface. What seems like drawing the same thing is actually a study of time, change, and persistence. The circle becomes a mirror, reflecting both the vastness of the world and the inner world of the one who draws it. In this way, to spend 10 years with a single shape is not to limit creativity, but to deepen it. The circle teaches that every return is also a beginning, and that even within the smallest motion lies the whole of existence. On a wide plain in southern England, a ring of massive stones rises from the earth. Their shapes are rough, their surfaces scarred by time, yet the arrangement feels deliberate. Stonehenge stands as one of the oldest circular structures built by human hands. Thousands of years ago, people dragged these stones across great distances to place them in a perfect circle. No one alive knows exactly why. Some believe it marked the movement of the sun and moon. Others see it as a gathering place for ritual and ceremony. When the summer solstice comes, the rising sun aligns with the stones, and for a brief moment, the circle becomes a map of the sky. This merging of earth and heavens shows how early people used geometry to connect the physical world with the divine. Across ancient cultures, the circle appeared not only in stone monuments, but also in the homes people built. Roundhouses were common in many early societies. Their walls curved inward to meet a central roof, creating a space without sharp corners. This design was practical. A round structure could resist wind, hold heat, and stand strong with fewer materials. The shape also encouraged people to gather in a circle, facing each other, sharing warmth and stories. Even at this early stage, the circular form shaped both the physical and social life of a community. As civilizations grew, their buildings grew with them. In Greece, the circle began to take on new forms. Greek theaters were built into hillsides, their seats arranged in a semicircle around the stage. This design allowed every spectator to see and hear the performance clearly. The shape also created a natural flow of movement, guiding attention toward the center where the action unfolded. The semicircle became a place where stories were shared, where citizens gathered to experience drama and debate. In this way, architecture supported the ideals of Greek society, linking form with purpose. The Romans took these ideas and expanded them. They mastered the arch, a structural element that allowed them to build larger, more stable buildings. With the arch came the dome, a circular form stretched upward into space. Domes allowed for wide, open interiors without the need for supporting columns in the middle. This was more than an engineering breakthrough. It changed the way people experienced space. To stand beneath a dome was to feel enclosed yet uplifted, held inside a vast, unified whole. The greatest example of Roman skill with the dome is the Pantheon. Built in the heart of Rome, it remains one of the most influential buildings in history. From the outside, it appears solid and heavy, its walls thick and plain. But step inside, and the space opens in a sudden, breathtaking sweep. The dome rises above, a perfect hemisphere resting on a circular base. At the very top is the oculus, a round opening that lets in sunlight and rain. The light moves across the walls and floor as the day passes, marking time like a giant clock. The proportions of the building are precise, based on careful measurements. The height of the dome equals the diameter of the base, creating a perfect balance. The Pantheon was built as a temple to all the gods. Its shape reflects that purpose. The circle suggests eternity and unity, a space without beginning or end. The oculus connects the temple to the sky, linking the human and divine. For those who entered, the experience was both physical and spiritual. The geometry itself became a form of worship, showing that order and harmony existed in the universe. Even today, the Pantheon's design speaks of power and vision. Architects for centuries have studied it, borrowing its principles for churches, government buildings, and monuments. When the Roman Empire fell, much of its knowledge scattered, but the circle remained a potent symbol. In medieval Europe, builders turned to it again, this time in the soaring walls of cathedrals. The most striking use of the circle appeared in rose windows. These vast, stained glass designs radiated outward like flowers, filling stone walls with color and light. From the street, they seemed to glow like jewels. Inside, sunlight passed through them, transforming plain interiors into places of wonder. The circular design of the rose window carried deep meaning. It represented the perfection of God's creation, the harmony of the heavens, and the unity of the faithful. A traveler walking from Stonehenge to a cathedral might not see the direct link between those distant structures, yet the connection exists. From rough stones placed in a ring to glass petals set in lead, the circle continued to shape human spaces. Each generation found new ways to build with it, adapting its form to meet new needs. In ancient times, the circle guided rituals under the open sky. In Greece, it framed the voices of actors and citizens. In Rome, it became a vast interior dome, a symbol of empire and eternity. In the Middle Ages, it bloomed into rose windows that caught the light of heaven. The story of circular architecture begins with simple needs: shelter, gathering, worship, and grows into expressions of meaning and beauty. The circle has always offered more than strength or function. It draws people together, focusing their attention and lifting their spirits. Whether in a ring of standing stones, a theater carved into a hillside, a dome rising over a city, or a window glowing with colored light, the circle has guided builders toward spaces that connect earth and sky, body and soul. Its power lies in its simplicity, a shape both ancient and ever new, carrying the weight of history while opening to the infinite. In the late 18th century, a new way of seeing the world began to take shape. It was an age of reason, a time when thinkers sought to explain nature through science and logic rather than myth or faith. Architects were no exception. They looked to pure geometry as a source of truth and harmony. The circle and the sphere became symbols of this pursuit. Unlike irregular forms found in nature, these shapes were perfect, balanced, and complete. To design with them was to express the belief that human reason could bring order to the world. Imagine an architect seated at a wooden desk, a sheet of paper before him, a compass in his hand. With a single motion, he draws a flawless circle. To him, this simple shape holds the promise of a better society. Buildings are no longer just shelters or monuments. They are ideas made visible. A dome is not only a roof, but a statement about unity. A circular plan is not only practical, but a vision of equality, where all plights are arranged around a common center. In this period, architecture became a form of philosophy. No figure embodies this vision more than Étienne-Louis Boullée. He never built most of his designs, but his drawings reshaped the way people thought about space. His most famous project was the cenotaph from Newton. Boullée imagined it as a massive sphere, larger than any dome ever constructed, resting within a circular base. Inside, the visitor would step into darkness, then look upward to see tiny holes pierced through the dome like stars. In daylight, the sun would shine through these openings, creating the illusion of a night sky. At night, a hidden lantern would reverse the effect, filling the space with light as if the sun itself were inside. Boulée's cenotaph was never meant to be practical. It was a tribute to Isaac Newton, whose discoveries revealed the laws governing the universe. By building a perfect sphere, Boullée sought to mirror the cosmic order Newton had described. The design was less about housing a body and more about inspiring awe. It was architecture as a form of thought, a way to make visible the invisible truths of the world. Even on paper, the drawing had power. Those who saw it understood that this was not just a building, but a dream of knowledge and infinity. Boullée created many such visionary drawings. He designed libraries that stretched into endless halls, museums shaped like pure geometric solids, and tombs that resembled planets. His work existed at the edge of reality, too vast and costly to construct, but too compelling to ignore. These designs influenced generations of architects, showing them that buildings could express ideas as clearly as words or paintings. while Boullée worked mostly in imagination. His contemporary Claude-Nicolas Ledoux sought to bring similar ideals into the physical world. Ledoux believed that architecture could shape society itself. He designed an entire city called Show based on rational principles. At its heart was a circular plan, with buildings radiating outward like spokes on a wheel. Each structure had a clear function and a symbolic form. A saltworks, for example, was built with precise symmetry to reflect the order of nature and industry. Ledoux saw the circle as a tool for organizing human life, a way to align work, home, and community into a coherent whole. The city of Show was never completed, but parts of it were built, and Ledoux's writings spread his ideas widely. His approach showed how geometry could be applied not just to single buildings, but to entire urban landscapes. By arranging streets and structures in circles, he aimed to create harmony between people and their environment. His vision was social as well as aesthetic, rooted in the belief that well-designed spaces could lead to better lives. These Enlightenment thinkers were not concerned with decoration or surface detail. They stripped architecture down to its core forms: circles, squares, spheres, and cylinders. This focus on essentials set the stage for later movements in modern architecture. In the 20th century, minimalists and conceptual architects looked back to Boullée and Ledoux for inspiration. They admired the clarity of their ideas and the boldness of their visions. For example, when modern architects like Le Corbusier designed buildings with stark geometric shapes, they echoed the purity of Boullée's spheres and Ledoux's radial plans. Even though the materials had changed, steel and glass replacing stone, the underlying principles remained. The circle still represented unity, the sphere still evoked infinity, and the act of drawing these shapes still carried philosophical weight. Consider a contemporary museum with a round central atrium. Visitors enter and find themselves in a space that feels both open and contained. Light filters down from above, drawing their gaze upward, much like the effect Boullée imagined for his cenotaph. The building may house modern art, yet its form speaks to ideas first explored in the Enlightenment. In this way, the past lives on in the present, not through direct imitation, but through shared ideals. The influence of these visionary architects can also be seen in conceptual works that exist primarily as drawings or digital models. Just as Boullée used paper to create worlds that could never be built, today's designers use technology to explore spaces beyond physical limits. Circular forms continue to appear in these speculative projects, symbols of perfection and possibility. The circle remains a canvas for thought, a shape that holds both history and hope. During the Enlightenment, to draw a circle was to make a statement about reason and order. It was a way of saying that the world could be understood, measured, and improved. Boullée and Ledoux believed that architecture could embody this belief, turning abstract ideals into tangible experiences. Their visions may have been too ambitious for their time, but they opened doors for future generations. Standing before one of Boulée's drawings or walking through a space influenced by Ledoux, a person can feel the same sense of clarity that these architects sought. The circle is not just a form, but a vision, a reminder that even the simplest shape can carry the weight of an age's dreams. In the Enlightenment, it was a beacon of reason, guiding architects and thinkers toward a future built on harmony and light. A person stands inside a vast circular room, their head tilted back, eyes drawn to a perfect ring of light above. The space feels whole, yet open. It holds them, yet it reaches beyond them. This is the strange power of the circle. It sets limits while suggesting something infinite. The philosopher Carsten Harries once wrote that circles act as mediators between heaven and earth. They create a boundary, a defined place where people can gather, but they also point outward toward what cannot be contained. In this way, a circle is both shelter and threshold. It marks the edge of human experience, and at the same time, gestures toward what lies beyond. Imagine drawing a circle in the sand. The line separates inside from outside. Within its curve, there is order. Outside, there is chaos, the unknown. This simple act reflects how humans have always tried to make sense of the world. A village forms around a central square. A temple rises on a hill. These are circles of meaning, places where life takes shape. Yet no circle is complete on its own. It always relates to what lies beyond its edge. In this duality, boundary and infinity, the circle holds a tension that makes it endlessly rich as a symbol. This tension plays out in architecture. When a circle becomes a building, it gathers people together, creating a shared center. Martin Heidegger spoke of dwelling as more than living in a house. To dwell, in his sense, is to be rooted in a place, to feel connected to the world and to others. A circular space can support this kind of dwelling. Its form naturally draws people inward. In a round room, there is no front or back, no single point of power. Everyone shares the center. Think of a fire circle at night, faces lit by flames, stories passing from one voice to another. The shape itself encourages community. Heidegger also wrote about how a building can reveal a world. A circle gathers earth, sky, mortals, and the divine into one space. It becomes a model of the universe in miniature. When built with care, a circular structure can help people experience their place within the larger whole. A dome, for example, may represent the sky, while the ground beneath represents the human realm. The meeting point between the two is not merely structural, but symbolic. The architecture shows how different parts of existence fit together. But there is a danger here. A circle can also be empty, a form without meaning. When architects use circular shapes simply because they look striking, the result may impress the eye, but leave the spirit untouched. A stadium might be perfectly round, yet it may not create any deeper sense of belonging. The shape becomes spectacle, a gesture without substance. Harries warns against this temptation. For him, architecture has an ethical dimension. It must serve more than function or display. It must create places where human life can unfold with dignity and purpose. The Pantheon offers a way to see these ideas in action. Built nearly 2,000 years ago, it remains one of the most profound examples of circular architecture. From the outside, it seems heavy and closed, its thick walls like a fortress. But inside, the space opens up. The dome sweeps overhead, its curves so perfect, it feels inevitable. At the top, the oculus allows light to pour in. As the sun moves across the sky, the beam shifts, tracing an invisible circle through the day. Standing beneath it, a person feels both protected and exposed, held within the building, yet connected to the heavens above. Viewed through Harry's lens, the Pantheon mediates between two realms. The floor, solid and geometric, represents the world of human order. The dome, vast and continuous, represents the infinite. The oculus links the two, a window to the sky that cannot be closed. In this way, the building enacts the duality of boundary and infinity. It gives visitors a place to stand, a firm ground, while reminding them of what lies beyond their reach. This balance is what makes the Pantheon more than an engineering marvel. It is a philosophical statement rendered in stone. Heidegger would see in the Pantheon an example of true dwelling. The space gathers different elements into harmony. The stone walls rise from the earth. The dome curves like the sky. The visitors move within it as mortals, and the light streaming through the oculus hints at the divine. All these parts meet in one place, not as decoration, but as a lived reality. A visitor does not simply look at the Pantheon. They experience it with their whole body. Their footsteps echo on the floor. Their breath mingles with the cool air. Their gaze follows the shifting light. In this way, the building becomes a world. This is what is lost when circles are used without care. A hollow imitation might copy the form of the Pantheon, but miss its essence. Without a guiding idea, the circle becomes a shell. It may attract crowds, yet those who enter leave unchanged. This raises a question. What does it mean to build ethically? For Harries, it means creating spaces that invite reflection and connection. It means acknowledging the needs of both the body and the spirit. A circle drawn on paper can be perfect, but a circle built in stone must also be humane. Consider a modern planetarium. Its dome mimics the sky, much like Boullée's visionary sphere for Newton. Inside, visitors sit in the dark, gazing at projected stars. The space can inspire wonder, yet it risks becoming mere entertainment if not grounded in meaning. The challenge for architects is to bridge that gap. They must design not only for the eye, but for the heart and mind. The circle remains a powerful tool for this task. Its form carries ancient memories and universal associations. It can gather a community or open a path to the infinite. But its power is not automatic. Each circle must be filled with purpose. The Pantheon achieves this through its perfect balance of form and idea. It shows that a building can be both shelter and symbol, both boundary and invitation. In its cool shadows and shifting light, visitors find a place where earth and sky meet, where the human and the divine share a common center. In 2002, in the southern city of Concepcion, Chile, two young architects, Mauricio Pezo and Sofia von Ellrichshausen, opened a small studio. Their practice began without a clear plan for growth or fame. What they had instead was curiosity. They were interested in simple forms, in how geometry could shape space and experience. From the beginning, they built slowly, testing ideas through drawings and small projects. Their early work was modest. Houses set in remote landscapes, each built with care and restraint. Over time, a theme began to emerge, one that would come to define their practice. The circle, a form at once ancient and modern, began to appear again and again. The project that made this focus explicit was called the Infinite Motive. It began as a collaboration with a group of architecture students in the Czech Republic. Pezo and von Ellrichshausen set a task that was both playful and rigorous. Together, they would design 100 circular enclosures. Each circle would overlap or intersect with others, forming a complex network of spaces. The students worked with simple materials: cardboard, paper, pencils. They drew hundreds of circles, then cut and assembled models, watching as the shapes multiplied and intertwined. The result was not a single building, but a field of possibilities. In drawings, the circles layered like ripples on water, each one influencing the next. In models, they formed winding paths, rooms without corners, openings that revealed unexpected views. Walking through these models in miniature felt like moving through a landscape shaped entirely by curved lines. It was both ordered and chaotic, a pattern that seemed at once planned and natural. For the architects, the Infinite Motive was more than an academic exercise. It was a way to explore how repetition can generate complexity. By limiting themselves to a single shape, they discovered endless variations. A circle might become a wall, a room, a courtyard, or a threshold. The overlaps created moments of tension and surprise. What began as a strict rule, the use of only circles, turned into a tool for imagination. Through this process, the architects developed a philosophy they would carry into their built work. Pezo and von Ellrichshausen often speak about the relationship between nature and architecture. They describe nature as a realm of disorder, full of accidents and irregularities. Architecture, by contrast, is an artificial order imposed on that chaos. For them, this is not a problem to be solved, but a dialogue to be explored. When they place a perfect geometric form in a wild landscape, they do so not to dominate nature, but to create a conversation. The straight edge or the curve highlights the roughness of the world around it. In this way, architecture becomes a way of seeing, a frame for experience. The circle in their hands is a form of discipline. It sets a boundary, a clear limit. Within that limit, infinite variations can occur. This is why they return to it again and again. A circle can contain chaos while remaining calm itself. It can hold difference without breaking apart. In this sense, drawing circles is an act of constructing meaning. Each line drawn on paper is a decision, a mark of intent. When those lines are built in concrete and wood, they become spaces where life unfolds. Their houses show how this philosophy works at full scale. Casa Pezo, one of their earliest projects, stands on a hillside surrounded by trees. It is a square tower raised on a platform, simple in form but rich in experience. Inside, the rooms spiral upward, each space connected to the next through shifting views. Light enters through carefully placed openings, creating patterns that change throughout the day. Although the building is not literally circular, its logic comes from the same interest in pure geometry that shaped the infinite motive. The house feels both grounded and abstract, a clear shape placed in a vast landscape. Casa Mary takes this exploration further. Built on a remote island, it consists of a series of round rooms connected by narrow passages. From above, it looks like a cluster of circles floating on the terrain. Each room opens to the sea or the forest through wide, framed views. Moving through the house feels like walking through a sequence of overlapping worlds. There are no sharp corners, only continuous curves. The simplicity of the plan allows for a rich complexity of experience. The house is both a shelter and a lens through which to see the surrounding landscape. These projects show how an idea developed in drawings and models can shape real places. The infinite motive was never built as a single structure, yet its influence appears in the architect's completed works. The discipline of the circle remains, even as the forms evolve. This sustained focus over many years reflects a deep commitment. It is not unlike the act of drawing a circle every day for a decade. The repetition builds skill, but it also builds meaning. Each new project adds to a growing body of exploration, a record of thought made visible in stone and wood. For Pezo and von Ellrichshausen, architecture is not about solving problems or following trends. It's about creating a world within the world, a space where order and disorder meet. The circle provides a way to do this with clarity and depth. It's a tool, a symbol, and a challenge. By choosing to work within its limits, the architects have opened a path to infinite possibilities. The legacy of their practice lies not only in the buildings they have constructed, but also in the drawings and models they continue to make. In a studio filled with stacks of paper and cardboard, the circle appears again and again. Each line is familiar, yet each drawing is new. Over time, the collection grows, much like the 100 enclosures of the infinite motive. Together, they form a map of exploration, a testament to what can emerge from sustained attention to a single, simple shape. Looking back over more than a decade of work, it becomes clear that the circle is not just a design choice for Pezo and von Ellrichshausen. It's a way of thinking, a method of seeing the world. Through its curve, they have found a language that connects past and present, nature and artifice, limitation and freedom. Their buildings stand as quiet proofs of this idea, each one a circle drawn not on paper, but in space, offering those who enter a chance to experience geometry as a living thing. In the early years of his life, Moritz Cornelis Escher did not seem destined to become one of the most famous visual thinkers of the 20th century. Born in the Netherlands in 1898, he studied architecture for a time, but his restless mind was drawn to art. At first, his prints showed landscapes and natural scenes, trees bending in the wind, rocky coastlines, villages perched on hillsides. These works were precise and detailed, yet they stayed within the bounds of the visible world. His early path seemed fixed, but beneath the surface, Escher was already searching for something more, an order hidden within nature, a structure that went beyond what the eye could see. In 1936, Escher traveled to Spain, where he visited the Alhambra in Granada. The palace's walls and ceilings were covered with intricate patterns of tiles, unlike the flowers and animals of traditional decoration. These designs were purely geometric, made of repeated shapes that fit together without gaps or overlaps. Standing in those rooms, Escher felt a sudden jolt of recognition. Here was the key he had been seeking, a way to explore infinity through repetition. The pattern seemed alive, extending in every direction, as if they could continue forever beyond the walls. Escher filled his sketchbooks with drawings of these tessellations, capturing their logic so he could study them later. When he returned home, he began to experiment, pushing the idea further than the craftsmen of the Alhambra ever had. Over time, his shapes began to transform. What started as simple geometric tiles became birds, fish, lizards, and other creatures, each interlocking perfectly with its neighbors. A bird's wing would form the back of a fish, which in turn became the tail of a lizard. These designs felt both playful and profound. They suggested a universe where everything was connected, where boundaries were illusions. Yet Escher's most ambitious work with these ideas came in his series known as the Circle Limits. The Circle Limit prints are some of his most famous. In them, Escher explored a kind of geometry known as hyperbolic tiling. Imagine a flat sheet stretched so thin at the edges that it curves inward, like the inside of a bowl. In this space, shapes appear normal at the center, but grow smaller and smaller as they move toward the edge, never quite reaching it. Escher used this principle to create images where creatures, angels and devils, fish and birds, spiral outward endlessly, their forms shrinking but never disappearing. The edge of the circle acts as infinity's boundary. Within this frame, the viewer sees an infinite world contained in a finite space. In Circle Limit 3, for example, white angels and dark devils spread across the plane, each touching 6 others in perfect symmetry. Near the center, the figures are clear and bold. As they approach the edge, they become tiny, almost invisible, yet they continue forever in the mind's eye. This was Escher's way of grappling with concepts that mathematicians describe with equations. Without formal training, he gave visual form to ideas of infinity and limit, space and boundary. Escher's fascination with geometry did not stay on the page. It expanded into visions of architecture that defied logic. Prints like Relativity show staircases that climb and descend in impossible ways, their orientations shifting so that up and down lose their meaning. In Ascending and Descending, monks march endlessly along a staircase built in a loop, forever climbing yet never getting higher. Waterfall takes this paradox further. Water flows uphill before tumbling down again, creating a perpetual motion that cannot exist in reality. These images play with the viewer's sense of space. They look at first like believable structures, yet the longer one studies them, the more the contradictions emerge. Escher used the tools of the architect, perspective, proportion, symmetry, but twisted them to reveal how fragile our perceptions can be. For Escher, these illusions were not mere tricks. They were explorations of the mind's attempt to impose order on a world that resists it. The buildings in his prints seem solid, yet they could never stand. This tension mirrors the human condition. We build systems of meaning, knowing they may collapse under scrutiny. In this way, Escher's art is philosophical. It asks viewers to consider what is real and what is imagined, what is possible and what is not. In 1969, near the end of his life, Escher created a work that brought together many of his themes. Simply titled Snakes, it shows 3 interlocking serpents weaving through a field of circular patterns. The snakes form a triangle, their bodies twisting in perfect symmetry. Around them, a network of circles radiates outward, growing smaller toward the edge, much like the figures in the Circle Limit series. Snakes combines the precision of mathematical structure with the organic flow of living creatures. It feels alive, yet it also feels timeless, like a pattern that has always existed. For Escher, it was a final statement, the culmination of decades spent exploring the meeting point of order and chaos. By the time Snakes was completed, Escher's work had already begun to influence people far beyond the art world. Mathematicians saw in his prints a way to visualize complex concepts. Some even used his images to explain theories of space and infinity to their students. Scientists studying the structure of the universe found inspiration in his patterns, which mirrored the branching of rivers, the growth of crystals, or the curvature of spacetime. In popular culture, Escher's impossible worlds appeared in posters, album covers, and films, capturing the imagination of audiences who might never have studied geometry or architecture. His legacy endures because his art speaks to a basic human desire to find order in a confusing world. When a viewer stands before one of Escher's prints, they experience a moment of recognition. The shapes are clear, the logic seems sound, yet something feels off. That moment of disorientation invites deeper thought. It reminds us that our ways of seeing are limited, that beyond the frame of our understanding lies a vast and mysterious reality. Escher began as a landscape artist, tracing the contours of hills and seas. By the end of his life, he was mapping the contours of the mind itself. His circles and tessellations were not just designs on paper. They were windows into infinite worlds, built not of stone or wood, but of imagination. Through them, he showed that even the simplest shapes, lines, curves, repeating patterns, can reveal truths that words alone cannot express. Tadao Ando began his life far from the world of architecture. He worked as a boxer in his youth, then taught himself to design buildings by studying books and traveling to see the work of others. This unusual path shaped his philosophy. His buildings are quiet, stripped of excess, and rooted in direct experience. He uses simple materials like concrete, glass, and wood. In his hands, these materials feel almost sacred. He believes that architecture should not only shelter the body, but also awaken the spirit. Light, shadow, and silence become his true building blocks. Ando often speaks of architecture as a way to guide people, to choreograph their movement and perception. He wants visitors to feel the weight of a wall, the coolness of water, the changing rhythm of the day. For him, geometry is not abstract theory, but a tool to shape experience. Among all the shapes he works with, the circle holds special power. A circle suggests unity and focus. It draws people inward while opening them to something larger. In 2023, Ando explored these ideas through the design of M Pavilion 10, a temporary structure in Melbourne, Australia. Each year, a new pavilion is built in the city's Queen Victoria Gardens as a space for public events and gatherings. When Ando was invited to design the 10th iteration, he chose to create a dialogue between two simple forms, the square and the circle. From above, the layout appears straightforward. A perfect circle rests inside a perfect square, their edges almost touching. But as visitors approach, the experience becomes richer and more layered. The pavilion is made of smooth, pale concrete, a material Ando has used throughout his career. The walls rise without ornament, precise and calm. At the center lies a shallow reflecting pool. Its surface perfectly still unless stirred by wind or footsteps. The water mirrors the sky, the surrounding trees, and the visitors themselves. This reflection doubles the space, making it feel both open and enclosed. Around the pool, the circular pathway invites slow movement. People walk the curve, their steps tracing the form of the building itself. As the day passes, light changes the character of the pavilion. Morning sun glances off the water. At noon, the concrete glows white and warm. In the evening, long shadows stretch across the floor, breaking the space into patterns of dark and light. A breeze moves across the pool, scattering ripples. These natural elements are as much a part of the design as the walls and floor. Ando has created a stage where wind and sunlight become performers, where visitors are both audience and participants. Entering the pavilion is like stepping into a ritual. There is no single way to move through it. Some people walk directly to the pool and stand still, watching their reflection. Others circle the space, pausing to listen to water trickle or leaves rustle beyond the walls. When events are held, lectures, concerts, community gatherings, the circle becomes a gathering point. The shape allows everyone to face the center, creating a sense of equality. No one sits at the head of the room. The architecture itself encourages connection. At night, subtle lights glow along the edge of the pool. The circle becomes a ring of soft illumination against the darkness of the park. Even after the crowds leave, the pavilion feels alive. Its simplicity holds attention. It does not tell visitors what to think or feel, but it offers a frame for reflection. A person standing there might notice the texture of the concrete under their hand, the coolness of the air on their skin, the way their own breath seems to echo softly. These small sensations are part of Ando's vision. He believes architecture should sharpen our awareness of the present moment. The M Pavilion was built as a temporary structure meant to last only one season, but its impact was immediate. People returned again and again, drawn by the calm clarity of its design. Some came for events, others simply to sit in silence by the pool. When the time came to dismantle it, the city chose instead to preserve it as a permanent landmark. It was moved to a new location where it continues to serve as a space for both community and contemplation. In this way, the pavilion fulfilled a role larger than expected. What began as a brief experiment became part of the city's fabric. Ando's exploration of the circle did not end with buildings. He extended these ideas into smaller objects, like furniture. One example is the circle square chair, which he designed as a direct echo of the M Pavilion's plan. The seat is a circle, the frame a square. Just as in the pavilion, the two forms interact, their differences creating tension and balance. Sitting in the chair is a miniature version of walking through the pavilion. The body becomes aware of geometry, of how shapes define space, even at the scale of a single object. Through works like these, Ando shows how the circle can shape experience on many levels. In a large public building, it gathers people together, creating a sense of shared focus. In a small, personal object, it shapes the way one sits, rests, and notices the world. In both cases, the circle is not merely a visual motif. It is an active force. It directs movement, frames views, and invites reflection. One visitor to the M Pavilion described walking there on a quiet morning before an event began. The park was empty except for a few birds. Inside the pavilion, the pool reflected the sky so perfectly that it seemed like another world below the surface. As she stood at the edge, a breeze stirred the water, and the reflection broke apart. In that simple moment, she felt the architecture come alive, not through sound or spectacle, but through the delicate interplay of form and nature. That is Ando's gift, to create places where the ordinary becomes extraordinary, where a circle of concrete and water can open a path to stillness and wonder. In Ando's hands, the circle is never just a shape. It is a way of thinking about how we move, see, and feel. The M Pavilion stands as proof of this approach. Though built of heavy concrete, it remains light in spirit. It holds both gatherings and silences, both crowds and solitary visitors. Over time, it has become a place where the city meets itself, reflected in the calm surface of a pool, framed by the perfect curve of a circle. A circle drawn on paper is simple. It can be made with a single motion of the hand, a perfect loop with no beginning or end. Yet when that same shape is built in stone, wood, or glass, it takes on new weight. In today's architecture, circles appear in many different ways, from quiet minimalist homes to vast religious spaces. The form carries history with it, but it also offers a way to think about modern life, with its challenges of community, sustainability, and meaning. In the work of minimalist architects, the circle often appears as a tool for focus. Tadao Ando, known for his use of raw concrete and light, has returned to the circle many times. His spaces are stripped of decoration, leaving only pure form. When a visitor enters one of his circular rooms, the experience feels both intimate and expansive. The curve draws the body inward, holding it gently, while the absence of corners lets the mind rest. In his M Pavilion in Melbourne, a circular plan inside a square frame creates a dialogue between order and openness. The still water of the central pool reflects sky and trees, turning a public gathering space into a site of quiet contemplation. John Pawson approaches the circle with similar restraint. His work is often described as austere, but it is better understood as precise. Pawson believes that simplicity allows people to see more clearly. In some of his chapels and meditation rooms, circular openings act as frames for light. A shaft of sun passing through a round window becomes an event, marking time and season. In these spaces, the circle is not a symbol imposed on the visitor, but a subtle presence. It shapes experience without calling attention to itself. While minimalists use circles to focus perception, Other contemporary designers look to sacred geometry for inspiration. Sacred geometry refers to patterns and shapes that have held spiritual meaning for centuries. In many traditions, the circle represents the infinite, the divine, or the unity of all things. Today, architects reinterpret these ideas in modern materials and forms. A new mosque may have a circular courtyard surrounded by glass walls instead of stone arcades. A temple may use steel and light to create a feeling of transcendence without copying the past. The circle is especially important in Islamic architecture. In traditional mosque design, the central courtyard often takes the form of a square or rectangle, a practical space for gathering and prayer. But in some modern mosques, this space has become circular, reflecting both historical symbolism and contemporary needs. A circular courtyard has no single axis of power. People can move freely around its edge or gather in the center, emphasizing equality among worshippers. The shape also echoes the ritual of pilgrimage, where believers circle the Kaaba in Mecca. By bringing this movement into daily life, the mosque becomes a place where cosmic and human orders meet. One striking example can be seen in a recently built mosque in the Middle East. The designers chose a plan based on overlapping circles. The main prayer hall is a perfect circle, surrounded by smaller circular courtyards that house gardens, fountains, and shaded paths. As visitors walk through the complex, they move from one circle to the next, experiencing a rhythm of enclosure and openness. The design uses modern materials, concrete, glass, water features, but the spatial logic comes from centuries-old traditions. It shows how sacred geometry can evolve without losing its essence. Circles also play a role in urban planning. Some cities now use circular layouts to foster community and sustainability. A round plaza can serve as a central meeting point, with streets radiating outward like spokes on a wheel. This form encourages walking and social interaction. It also makes resources easier to share. For example, a circular neighborhood might have shared gardens and water systems at its center, reducing environmental impact. In this way, geometry becomes an ethical choice, shaping how people live together. Consider a small town built in a desert region where water is scarce. The architects designed the town around a central circular plaza with a large cistern beneath it. Rainwater is collected from surrounding roofs and channeled to this point. The plaza is both a public square and a symbol of collective care. People gather there to celebrate festivals, hold markets, and make decisions about their community. The circle becomes a practical tool for sustainability and a metaphor for shared responsibility. These ideas connect back to the ancient role of the circle as a mediator between earth and sky. In the past, circular buildings often represented cosmic order. Today, they can represent ecological order, reminding people of their relationship to the planet. When a round space gathers light, air, and water, it turns natural forces into part of daily life. This connection is especially important in a time of climate crisis. Architecture cannot solve these problems alone, but it can shape how communities respond. Minimalist architects, sacred builders, and urban designers all engage with the circle in different ways. Sometimes it appears as a quiet room for meditation, sometimes as a bustling plaza or a vast dome. What unites these works is the recognition that the circle still holds power. It is both ancient and modern, both practical and symbolic. Imagine a visitor walking through a modern mosque courtyard at dusk. The call to prayer has ended, and families linger by the fountains. The courtyard is perfectly round, its smooth stone glowing in the fading light. Children run along the edge, their laughter echoing softly. In the center, a group of elders sits in a circle, talking. The space feels timeless, yet it is shaped by contemporary needs. It provides shade, channels breezes, and collects rainwater for reuse. It is sacred, but it is also sustainable. Later, the same visitor might travel to a city park designed by a minimalist architect. There, a simple circular clearing in the woods becomes a place for quiet reflection. The geometry is subtle, almost invisible, yet it guides the experience. The visitor sits on a low stone bench and notices how the circle frames the sky above. In both the mosque and the park, the circle works on multiple levels: spiritual, social, environmental. This is how contemporary designers continue to engage with a form that has been with humanity since the first stone rings of prehistory. The circle endures not because it is fashionable, but because it speaks to deep needs. It helps people gather, reflect, and act together. Whether carved in concrete or traced in light, it remains a shape that connects the human scale to the vastness of the world. In a time of rapid change, that connection is more valuable than ever. After 10 years of drawing, building, and imagining circles, what remains is not only a collection of works, but a way of seeing. A decade is long enough for ideas to spread beyond a single studio or city. Teachers begin to use the circle as a starting point for design education, not as a rule, but as a challenge. A circle appears simple at first glance, but its simplicity demands clarity. When a student is given a blank page and asked to design within a perfect curve, every decision becomes visible. There are no hidden corners, no easy distractions. In this way, the circle trains the mind to think critically. It forces the designer to consider proportion, rhythm, and balance. In a classroom, this exercise might begin with a single circle drawn in pencil. The instructor asks the students to imagine it as a room, a plaza, or an entire city. As they sketch, they confront questions of entry, movement, and use. Where does someone step into the space? How does light enter? How do people gather without hierarchy? These questions are not abstract. They shape the experience of real buildings and communities. By working with the circle, students learn to see how geometry influences behavior. Many of these explorations never leave the page, but that does not make them less meaningful. Some of the most powerful ideas in architecture have existed only as drawings. Étienne-Louis Boullée's vast spherical monuments were never built, yet they continue to inspire architects centuries later. A drawing can be a building of the imagination, unbound by material limits. When someone views it, they complete the design in their own mind. This is why conceptual work matters. It creates a shared language of possibility. The act of drawing circles over and over for 10 years becomes a form of research. Each sketch adds to a body of knowledge. Patterns emerge. A line first drawn as a study may one day inform a built project. Even when a design remains unbuilt, it leaves traces in the thinking of those who encounter it. A student might see a drawing of overlapping circles and carry that memory into their own practice years later. In this way, the impact of circular exploration extends beyond any single building. Circles also carry social meaning. When built at the scale of a plaza or park, they become natural gathering places. People instinctively move toward the center, then outward again. This movement creates a sense of shared presence. Unlike a square, which has edges and corners that divide, a circle has no privileged position. No one stands above another. In a round space, everyone faces each other equally. This quality makes circular forms especially powerful for civic life. Consider a small town square designed as a perfect circle. Farmers set up stalls around the edge. Children play in the open center. During festivals, music fills the space, and the entire community gathers without a stage or podium. The form itself encourages participation. It does not impose hierarchy, but it does create focus. Over time, this kind of space can shape the life of a town. It becomes a place where decisions are made, where stories are told, where memory is stored in the collective body. One of the earliest and most enduring examples of this idea can be found in the city of Bath, England. In the 18th century, architect John Wood the Elder imagined a new kind of urban form. Inspired by classical ideals, he designed two interconnected spaces, the circus and the crescent. The circus is a perfect ring of Georgian townhouses. From above, it looks like a stone necklace laid on the ground. 3 streets radiate outward like spokes. connecting it to the rest of the city. The effect is both monumental and intimate. Wood's design was not only about aesthetics. It reflected Enlightenment ideals of harmony and community. The circus creates a stage where daily life unfolds. Residents look across at one another from their curved facades. Strangers passing through feel briefly united by the form. When people gather in the center, they are literally encircled by architecture. The crescent, built nearby, extends this idea into a sweeping arc. Together, these spaces demonstrate how geometry can shape social experience. Even today, centuries after they were built, they remain vital parts of the city's life. The lasting power of Wood's work shows that a circle is never just a shape. It is an idea about how people live together. Over the last 10 years, architects who focused on circles have returned to this truth again and again. Some have drawn unbuilt visions, exploring the limits of form. Others have constructed small pavilions or houses that test how curved walls affect movement and perception. A few have designed public spaces where entire communities can gather. In each case, the circle acts as a catalyst. Imagine a designer standing at their desk, sketching late into the night. The page is filled with overlapping loops. Some are tight and dense, others wide and open. Each one represents a possibility. The designer knows that most will never be built, yet the act of drawing them matters. Each circle is a question. What if space were organized this way? How would people move, meet, dwell? After 10 years, the questions have multiplied, but so have the answers. Some of those answers live in the lines on paper. Others have taken shape in wood, stone, or concrete. Still others exist only in the minds of those who have seen the work and carried it forward. When viewed from above, a city can resemble a great drawing. Streets radiate like lines. Plazas open like shapes on a canvas. The influence of circular thinking can be traced in these patterns. A round park here, a curved housing complex there, each one a small reminder of an ancient form. The decade-long exploration of circles leaves its mark not only on individual buildings, but on the larger urban fabric. It shapes how communities gather and how they see themselves. In the end, what remains is a legacy of attention. To spend 10 years on a single form is to believe that depth matters more than variety. The circle, repeated and reimagined, becomes a thread connecting past and present, concept and construction, individual and society. Its line closes on itself, yet within that closure lies infinite possibility. A line curves across a blank page. It bends further, and finally closes upon itself. In that moment, a circle is born, simple, complete, and infinite. Across centuries, countless hands have traced this shape, each one seeking something different within it. The circle is at once a path and a destination, a motion that returns even as it moves forward. When we look back at the people who have devoted themselves to this form, we see not repetition for its own sake, but a shared search for meaning. M.C. Escher spent his life exploring circles that contained worlds. In his Circle Limit series, angels and devils spiral toward the edge of a disc, shrinking as they go, never reaching the boundary. These works are not mere patterns. They are visions of infinity contained within a finite frame. Escher's prints, like relativity and ascending and descending, play with space and perception. Stairs go up and down at the same time. Water flows uphill. What seems solid dissolves under close study. His circles invite the viewer into a puzzle with no final answer. They remind us that the mind itself moves in loops, always seeking order, yet never quite finding it. Where Escher drew impossible worlds, Tadao Ando builds real ones. His circles are made of concrete and water, light and shadow. At his M Pavilion in Melbourne, a perfect circle lies inside a perfect square. The space holds a pool of still water, its surface reflecting the sky and the surrounding trees. Visitors walk the curve, pause to look inward, or gather at the center for events. Ando's circle is not an illusion like Escher's, but it has its own kind of magic. It makes people aware of their own movement, their breathing, the play of sunlight and breeze. For Ando, the circle is an experience first and a shape second. It turns the ordinary act of standing together into a moment of shared reflection. Pezo von Ellrichshausen approached the circle through long, patient repetition. In their infinite motive project, they worked with students to design 100 circular enclosures. At first glance, the task seemed narrow, but as the circles overlapped and combined, new patterns emerged. The models showed paths twisting through curved walls, spaces opening and closing like a living organism. From this experiment came a philosophy. By limiting themselves to a single form, the architects discovered endless variation. Their houses, like Casa Mary, carry this lesson forward. Each one is a conversation between geometry and landscape, order and wildness. Over a decade of drawing circles, they built not only structures, but a way of thinking. Long before them, Étienne-Louis Boullée imagined a sphere so vast it could never be built. His cenotaph for Newton was a dream of reason made visible. The interior would have been lit by tiny holes like stars, creating a perfect night sky during the day. At night, a hidden lantern would reverse the effect, turning darkness into blinding light. Boulée's circle was cosmic in scale. It was not meant for practical use, but for awe. Even though it remained on paper, it shaped the minds of architects who came after him. His work shows how a circle can exist as both concept and form, as much an idea as a building. These figures seem very different at first. Escher worked alone at a printing press, crafting intricate illusions. Ando stands on construction sites, directing the pouring of concrete. Pezo von Ellrichshausen worked collaboratively, filling studios with cardboard models. Boullée never built at all, yet his drawings still speak. What unites them is not their methods, but their devotion. Each spent years circling the same question: what can this shape reveal? Their answers vary, but all share a sense of wonder at the circle's power. Repetition plays a crucial role in their work. To draw a circle once is easy. To draw it 1,000 times is to enter a different state of mind. Pezo von Ellrichshausen discovered this through the sheer volume of their infinite motive drawings. Escher experienced it through the meticulous planning of his tessellations, where every curve had to align perfectly with its neighbors. Ando finds it on the construction site, where precision is achieved only through constant adjustment and care. Boulée's repetition was internal, his mind looping through ideas as he filled page after page with visionary designs. Through this deep focus, the circle becomes more than a shape. It becomes a practice, a meditation on patience and persistence. This kind of iterative exploration teaches lessons that extend beyond architecture or art. It shows that depth matters more than speed, that returning to a single problem again and again can lead to unexpected insights. In a world that often values novelty, these figures remind us of the power of staying with one idea. The circle, with its endless return, is the perfect metaphor for this process. Each loop brings us back to where we started, but we are changed by the journey. The line is the same, yet the drawer is different. The circle also reflects the nature of human creativity itself. Every act of creation begins in mystery. We set out without knowing where the path will lead. As we work, we discover connections, patterns, and meanings we could not have planned. When the work is done, we often find ourselves back at the beginning, ready to start again. This cycle repeats across a lifetime. Escher's prints show this visually, with figures spiraling toward infinity. Ando's pavilions enact it physically, as visitors walk the same curve again and again. Pezo von Ellrichshausen's overlapping rooms embody it spatially, while Boulée's drawings capture it in the realm of ideas. Consider a visitor moving through these worlds in sequence. They begin by looking at an Escher print. Their mind twists to follow its impossible lines. Then, they step into an Ando pavilion, feeling their own body move in response to light and shadow. Next, they wander through a house by Pezo von Ellrichshausen, passing from one circular room to another, never quite sure where the path will lead. Finally, they open a book of Boulée's drawings and see a sphere so vast it seems to contain the universe. Each experience is different, yet all share a common thread. The circle connects them, linking thought, body, space, and imagination. In this way, the circle becomes both the path and the goal. It guides movement while embodying completion. To walk its curve is to move endlessly without reaching an edge. To build or draw it is to participate in a tradition that spans millennia. The first human who placed stones in a ring at Stonehenge set in motion a journey that continues today in concrete, steel, and digital pixels. Every circle drawn since then is part of that same motion. As the line closes, we return to where we began, a blank page, a single curve, a shape that holds both everything and nothing. The circle asks no questions, yet it answers them all. It is as vast as Boullée's imagined cosmos, and as small as the ripple from a drop of water. It is the trace of a hand, the plan of a city, the pattern of a galaxy. It is the loop of thought that drives artists and architects to begin again and again and again. Through its curve, we glimpse the endless return of human creativity, a journey with no end but the circle itself.